The desert is a dangerous place. It's always moving. So it's hard to know where you are and you can get lost. There's very little water. So almost nothing grows there. So there's almost nothing to eat. In the daytime, it is so hot that the sun scorches your skin. And in the night, it is cold. When the wind blows, the sand stings your skin when it hits you. So people wear many clothes to protect themselves from the sun and the blowing sand. The desert is a dangerous place. People do not go into the desert unless they have to. When the great flood was over, all the creatures went out into the four directions of the earth to fill it with life again. They often gathered along rivers. People lived in small villages and cities. One of the most ancient of these cities was called Ur. In the city of Ur, the people believed that there were many gods. There was a god for every tree, every rock, and every flower. There was a god of the sky, of the clouds, of the water, of the land. The world was alive with gods. But there was one family that believed that all of God was in every place. They did not yet know that, but that is what they believed. Abram and his wife, Sarai, were part of that family. When it came time to move on to a new place, they were not sure that God would be there. They also wondered what the new place would be like. They walked towards Haran with their sheep, their donkeys, and their many helpers. Even the old people and the children went too. They slept in their tents at night, and they followed the great river called the Euphrates. It showed them the way, and it gave them and all their animals water to drink. It took a long, long time. Finally, they met people coming out of Haran, and they knew the journey was almost over. And then they were there. Sometimes Abraham would go out to the edge of the desert and look out across the sand and into the sky. And then God came so close to Abraham, and Abraham came so close to God that he knew what God wanted him to do. God wanted Abraham and Sarai to move on again to another new place. And God said, I will make you a great family. I will bless you, and you will be a blessing. Abraham and Sarai did what God said. They went into the desert to the west of Haran, and they walked up towards Canaan. They went with all their sheep, their tents, and many helpers, but this time there was no river to show the way or to give them water to drink. finally they came to a place called Shechem. Abram climbed up the hill, and here he prayed to God, and God was there. So Abram built an altar to mark the place where God was. And they continued on their journey. The next day they came to a place near Bethel, and here Abram prayed again, and God was there also. So they built another altar to mark this place where God was. God was not just here or there. All of God was everywhere. So they went on to Hebron to make their home near the Oaks of Mamre. One night, God brought Abram outside. Abram looked up into the sky, and God came so close to Abram, and Abram came so close to God, that Abram knew what God was saying. You will become the father of a great family. You and Sarai will be the mother and father, and the members of the great family will be as many as the stars in the sky and the grains of sand in the desert. Abram laughed. He and Sarai were very old. God's promise sounded impossible. But God said to change their names anyway. Abram became Abraham, the father of many, and Sarai was called Sarah. One day, 3 strangers came out of the desert. Abraham was sitting by his tent and he invited them in. Sarah mixed 3 measures of flour, which was a lot, with meat and milk to drink, which was the custom. They told Abraham that he and Sarah would have a son. Sarah was standing by the tent and heard them, and she laughed. They were too old to be having children. The 3 strangers went on their way. And do you know what happened? Abraham and Sarah had a son. And they laughed again. So they named the baby Laughter, which in their language is called Isaac. When the boy was grown, old Sarah, who was now full of many years and very tired, died. And she was buried in the Oaks of Mamre. Abraham was lonely. He missed Sarah very much, but he had one more thing he had to do. He sent his most trusted helper back to the land of his people to find a wife for Isaac. Abraham's helper stopped by a well, and a young woman named Rebecca offered him water to drink and helped him give water to his animals. She was as full of courage as she was kindness. Rebecca then invited him to meet their family. He told their family about Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and the great family, and Rebecca decided that she wanted to be part of that great family. So they went across the desert, past Shechem and Bethel, towards Hebron. When Isaac saw them coming, he ran out to meet her. Soon Isaac and Rebekah were married, and now Abraham, old and full of many years, died and was buried with Sarah in a cave where the trees were. Then Isaac and Rebekah had children, and their children had children, and their children had children, and this went on until your grandparents had your parents, and your parents had you. And now we are all part of that great family, which has become as many as the stars in the sky and the grains and sand in the desert. Now I wonder what part of the story you like best. I wonder what part of the story you found most important. I wonder what we can learn from the story.